Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Memorial High School. I know that the clapping was for me. So usually when I walk in this auditorium, that's what happens with the students. Just some housekeeping, just so everyone's aware. If for some reason the fire alarm goes off, everyone please stay where you are. The police, the firemen, and our custodians will make sure we're all safe. So please, again, stay where you are. I'm going to keep my part really brief. I would just like to thank Dr. Oz, Health Corps, and everyone else who helped put this program together. This was given to us on short notice. The superintendent and I brought it up to the board, and luckily with the town, the schools, we all were able to put this together for the community and the students of West New York. So. At this time, I'd like to welcome up Superintendent of Schools, Ms. Clara Herrera.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not as tall as Mr. Walrup, but I'll see how I can see all of you. Good evening. This is a very important night, and I want to welcome all of the parents that are here in the audience. It is a very bad day outside, and hopefully you got here not too wet. Thank you for coming with your children. Thank you for giving us your time. We know how busy your schedules are since you're working parents. And the teachers that are sitting here, I want to thank our board. As Mr. Walrup said, this was a very short notice event, and the security and the thought that went into it was so quickly done because the effort and the importance that we thought this event had merited that we did it in this short time. We're very fortunate to have a partnership the way we have with Health Corps, and even more fortunate to be able to have tonight our host, Dr. Oz. We are a very small town. No one knows half of the time where we are. When we say we're West New York, they think we're in New York. Well, we're not. We're in New Jersey, but Dr. Oz knows that. He recognized it, and he's here tonight with us. I just want to deviate a little bit and say a few words in Spanish for those parents that are here that may not fully understand the importance of tonight. Tonight is the National Night for Conversation. It is important that we take time from our busy schedule, whether it's at dinner, when we're walking in the door, when we're leaving for work, to discuss some of the issues that will be discussed here today. It is of utmost importance that we touch base with our students, with our children, with our neighbors, with our community. And I thank Mayor Roque, Dr. Felix Roque. He's also a doctor, and he understands how important this topic is as well. Because in his practice of pain management, many times, there is that deviation where the painkiller may become a drug that's prescribed that's abused. And he takes great efforts in making sure that his patients always stay healthy and safe. And not only is he a doctor, but he's the mayor of our town, and he came quickly around to make sure that we had the security here and whatever we needed at our fingertips, or else we would not be able to host this event. Thank you, Dr. Felix Roque, our mayor. Gracias. Gracias a todos los padres que están esta noche aquí. Es muy importante su presencia. Es muy importante el día de hoy porque lo estamos declarando el Día Nacional de la Conversación entre los padres, los hijos y la comunidad. Y ustedes no tienen la imaginación de lo importante que es parar un minuto en el día para tener ese pequeño toque con nuestros hijos, con nuestros amigos, con nuestra comunidad, para dar una ayuda a esa persona que necesita esa ayuda. Ese es el éxito de nuestra comunidad. Y estamos muy agradecidos que el Dr. Oz esté aquí esta noche, reconociendo esta noche desde West New York el lugar tan pequeño pero tan importante para todos nosotros y en nuestros corazones. Thank you. And I would like to bring up our mayor, Dr. Felix Roque, to say a few words.
Good evening. How's West New York doing tonight? Fantastic. Wow, I am very, very happy to have such a prominent doctor here today. Ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman was doing 2 heart surgeries this morning and takes time, yes. He took time off from his very busy practice to come to this humble town to educate us about drug addiction and the problems that our kids are having now. So I am deeply, deeply honored to have such a human being next to me today here in our humble town. And I will encourage all the other towns, all the other cities in the state of New Jersey and the other states in the United States to follow his lead. He's spearheading such an important movement for all of us. And it's all about education, and it's all about talking to our children, and that's what this is all about tonight. So I'm also want to congratulate him tonight because Loretta Weinberg, she's the Senate Majority Leader here in New Jersey. Today, she designated the Night of Conversation in New Jersey as a resolution. So this is going to be every year now, every November, we're going to be able to educate our children. And I just wanted to say, Dr. Oz, thank you from the bottom of my heart. My town loves you, and please keep helping us out. Thank you very much.
So let me address a few topics that you might be wondering. Why would I bother West New York coming out in the rain? First of all, I'm appreciative you trusted the process and you made something happen in a miraculously short time. But I'm in this community. I live just a few miles north of here. I can get home easily from here, which is sort of nice. But the main reason we came to West New York is because we knew a lot about this area. Obviously, Health Corps is here. Kyle, where's Kyle? Our coordinator's hiding somewhere back there. There. Thank you, Ray. He's probably doing damage control ready for me. But I also knew you had a mayor who's a pain medicine doctor, which is a big deal, Felix, because doctors who don't know pain medicine, I'm in that category, we get very little training in pain medicine. In fact, we get less training from what we can tell than veterinarians do. Maybe that's why pets have less pain than we do. But it is an unfortunate reality that we've actually pushed the medical profession to take pain more seriously. We actually call it the 5th vital sign. And that has caused an unpredicted problem, which is that we now give pain medication so readily that there are lots circulating, and we're going to go through an infographic what has resulted from that. But I knew that we had from the top, the mayor, to the bottom, everybody involved in just trying to live a normal life, a community that I think is the perfect bouillabaisse to tell the story. A little bit of all the spice, all the nutrients, all the things that could be bad, all in one place. So what better place to have a town hall that could speak for all of America? Because I know these types of events are taking place. My wife's church is having one in Philadelphia as we speak. I've been contacted by other groups interested in similar events, but we decided to televise from here because we thought we could tell the story of America from West New York. So you stand for America tonight, and thank you for letting us do that. Now, Mayor Felix spoke a little bit about the fact that it's information, but I got to say, I've got 4 children. They usually know more about the stuff than I do already. So I don't think it's just information, because I don't think people change based on what they know. They change based on how they feel. And the purpose of today is to give us some tools, but also to get us to feel differently about the whole process. Part of the change has happened over the last decade because we've had a dramatic, probably a quadrupling in the addiction rates in some of these categories in that time period, is that we've got very cavalier with drugs. When I was growing up, drugs weren't just something that other people did. They were really dirty and they were dangerous. And we've lost a little bit of that fear. And some of the numbers we're going to present to you today, I think, will change some of that thought. And if the numbers don't work, we brought some surprises for you. That Dr. Krupane, who's sitting in the middle there, who's the physician who runs the medical unit for my show, and I are going to present to you, we actually brought you some organs. those of you who have not touched a human brain recently or some other things we're going to show you, you'll get to do that today. I hope you brought gloves. If not, we brought some for you. And they're the purple gloves that you like to see on the show, so you'll know they're clean. But I want to tell a tale, a story of how this came to be, and that's really the purpose today, is to get you comfortable with what's happened, get everyone in America to understand where we are, so we can have this national night of conversation. And I want to be clear about this. I'm asking one thing and one thing only. I want everyone who's watching at home right now to go get your plate, an empty plate. It symbolizes that the dinner tonight's not about the food, it's about the conversation. Take a picture of it and post it. Hashtag night of conversation. I'm going to be following during this event tweets that are coming in, post to my Facebook page or your own, just hashtag night of conversation. I'll be pulling out the most interesting ones, the ones that I think are compelling and help tell those stories. Because I'm positive that if we do this the right way, not only will we set a precedent for future years, and thanks to the wonderful folks in Trenton for starting the process with this proclamation, but we'll also save nights tonight. Because the first question you have to ask, because if you're listening carefully, you're the anti-drug. The way we beat this process is by connecting people, and the best connection tool has always been the parents, because they are the anti-drug. We forget it sometimes, but kids actually do care about what we say. They just don't tell us that. Think of your own lives and how influential your parents were for good and for bad. But the first question I want everyone asking tonight at dinner is, how are you coping? How are you dealing? It's not an attack, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking, how are you coping? And then I want to know how your friends are coping. How are they dealing? Because that's going to take us to the third question, which is, are they using anything to deal with that stress that's outside of their own bodies? And when we talk through the process and take you through this tale, you'll understand why those questions are so important. Now, we got Jenna and Megan over there. The two beautiful women to the far left of the stage as you see it, who are counselors, experts in this area. And I wanted to applaud them for being here and taking time from their schedules. They're here to help. If any of you have issues that you want to address and you're not sure how to get ahead of them, they're here to help you out. So please call on them. We can be discreet about this, and we'll be here after the event as well. But we're going to start with Dr. Phil. Who's the dapperly dressed gentleman, good-looking guy next to me. I actually met him on my show when he came on as a guest. He's an emergency room doctor. He's also the physician who runs research for HealthCore. HealthCore, just so you all know what this entity is behind me, it's a nonprofit that my wife and I and other friends founded about 12 years ago. It's like the Peace Corps. It goes into communities just like the Peace Corps used to, but you train college grads, energetic folks like Kyle and others, about life, about teaching, and about health. And you put them in schools around the country and have them teach young people about life, because they're close enough age, like big brothers and big sisters, they can mentor these young people, which is what I think you've all experienced here in West New York. And we've got schools all over the country. We touch 35,000 kids' lives. But it's these kinds of events where you take the experience you're having and marry it to programs that don't currently have healthcare coordinators that allow us to make the conversation live on. So I'm asked Dr. Phil to come talk about a survey that he conducted this week that looked at what are the attitudes young people have towards drugs, addiction, and life in America. Phil?
Thank you so much, Dr. Oz. Research shows that at least 90% of addicted persons actually start using substances before the age of 18.
You sound like me. That's sort of cool. How did you do that?
I don't know how we did that. That's.
I'm not moving my mouth, he's making I'll tell you, this guy can do anything he wants.
Yeah, thank you for that encouragement. So like I was saying, so at least 90% of persons who become addicted actually start using substances before the age of 18. That means teenagers. That means high school students, like many of you. So naturally, HealthCore was interested in learning more about our students' experiences with addiction and drugs. And what we did was we actually conducted a survey. We asked them some questions that I'd also like to ask some of you. Wow, I'm hearing myself over and over again. Hopefully I sound pretty good so far, right? Okay. Woo, okay, great. Because that's what tonight's all about, having a conversation, whether it's with other people or yourself. Okay. All right, first up, I would like to see show of hands. How many of you would say that you have dinner with your children most days out of the week? That's about 4 days at least out of the week. How many people would we say? Okay, all right, Dr. Oz, thank you for that. So it looks like it's less than half if I had to say. Would you say, Dr. Oz? I agree. All right, so we asked our students in different parts of the country the same thing. All right, we'll see who's telling the truth or not. All right. So actually when we asked our students, it was a very high number. It was the majority of students that said that they had dinner with their parents at least 4 days a week or more. And then about a third even said that they had dinner with their parents every single day of the week. So very reassuring. All right, our next question. So how many of you would say that you've spoken to your kids about the following issues? How about the dangers of illegal drugs? How many would you say? All right, now we're seeing an increase from that dinner conversation. I would say maybe it's getting closer to half. How about speaking to your kids about the dangers of alcohol? Okay, and that looks about the same, or even maybe a tinge more. Now, how about this? How about the dangers of prescription drugs? Okay, and that's maybe about what we would have predicted, is that we're seeing the numbers kind of drop down, and that's okay. That's what this night is all about. So let's see what our kids said. It's about what we saw in this audience. So it's 80%, an overwhelming majority of the students that said that they had been talked to by a parent or guardian about the dangers of alcohol or illegal drugs. But what do you notice when we go over to talking about prescription drugs? It's a steep drop-off. So again, a reason to have this night of conversation. All right, so, and regarding substances that may or may not be addictive, we'll see what you guys think. How many of you think heroin is addictive? All right, that looks like it's a unanimous. Heroin is addictive. How about this, though? How about marijuana? Okay, about the same amount. Okay. How about prescription painkillers like Vicodin? How many would you say that you could be addicted to that? Okay. Hey, are you guys giving them the answers? All right, and our last question is going to blow your minds. How many, and it's okay if you're stumped on this one, how many of you think soda is addictive? Whoa, okay, wow. All right. I won't talk about what's in the vending machines, right, at West New York High School? Okay. All right, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see. So, looks like things are a little different from what the students thought. About the same amount thought that heroin and marijuana were addictive, but when it came to prescription drugs, it fell down again. And then we see that soda, they also don't really think that that's addictive. So a couple of points. First, you see that huge drop-off from heroin and marijuana down to prescription drugs. Maybe we need to clarify that, yes, prescription drugs can be just as or more addictive than some of these substances. And then isn't it interesting that the same amount who thought prescription drugs were addictive also thought soda was addictive. So maybe they're actually, not only do they see it as different from heroin and marijuana, but they also kind of trivialize it to the point that they think it's as addictive as soda. So very interesting. All right. And so this is one that hopefully will speak to all of our hearts. And you don't have to raise your hands for this one. It's how many of you believe that you have someone in your family who you suspect might have an addiction problem with either, no, you don't have to raise your hands for this, it's okay. But just giving feedback to yourself, just thinking about people in your lives, anyone who you think might be addicted to either drugs or alcohol. We also asked our students this question. And very, sobering is that about half of our students can think of someone in their family that they suspect either present or past has had an addiction problem. So that shows us how much drugs and alcohol addiction, that this whole issue hits so close to home that it's so fitting, it's so appropriate that we're having a night of conversation, and we thank you for being here. I will now pass it over to our other stellar doctor, the medical director at the Dr.Oz show, Dr. Michael Crupain.
Thanks, Phil. So, as Phil said, I'm the medical director for the show, so my job is to oversee the research unit.
I saw the dressing.
I don't usually get to speak.
You get that next year.
So, I'm going to go through some of the facts. That's typically what I do. So, we made a cool infographic about the 10 things you didn't know about drugs. And Dr. Oz and I can do this together. I don't usually ever get to co-host with Dr. Oz, so I'm very nervous. But the first thing we're going to talk about is really important. It's that addiction, not everyone realizes, but it's a chronic disease. It's not sort of someone's fault. It's a chronic disease, just like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, and it can be fatal if we don't treat it. And it happens to be a disease. I started off I do preventive medicine, which is a public health specialty, but I first started off training to be a neurosurgeon. So this is a chronic disease of, I guess, my favorite organ. And Dr. Oz had Sanjay Gupta on the show yesterday, and they were fighting over this, which was the best organ. So maybe we'll talk about this organ. So it's a disease of the brain.
Should I show it to him?
Yeah, show them.
I'll do the show and tell. So I need students in the very back. Students in the very back. Come on. Three people back there. I hope I'm not making too much noise. So, and if I can have it. Come on up. Have some grab.
Test.
Is that me or you?
That's me.
Here's some gloves. Students, I want you to come on in. What's your name? All right, we have Cindy here.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Now, you put the gloves on. I'm holding the mic for you. Cindy.
Ronnie.
Oh, Sabrina, Kimberly, Tatiana,
Flavio.
We got a bunch.
Sabrina.
The red hair, Sabrina.
I like it.
I like it too.
Brianna,
That's red hair too, isn't it?
Gabby.
All right, so the best thing to do is look at students and how they react. So the part of the reason we pick the brain to talk about first, there's the brain. If you get your gloves on, if you don't mind, it's the purple gloves there. If you don't mind, lift up the brain. Lift it up. And don't drop the brain. Do not drop the brain. Oh, are you ticklish? Don't drop the brain. All right. So you can pass it on. Now describe what you're feeling.
It's cold and spongy.
Spongy. So describe the consistency. What's it like?
And it's got like grapes in it. It's smooth.
Like grapes?
Feels like a grape,
grape.
almost like a prune kind of. But
Are you hungry?
I don't think so.
How would you describe it?
It's heavy. It's really heavy, so it's good. Good matter in there, I guess. And yeah, I think it's kind of soft. It's very squishy, very like liquidy.
So Dr. Crupain, come on over here. He's, again, trained in neuroscience. Part of the reason I wanted Mike to explain this, the anatomy to everybody, if you got we'll pass up the brain down, is that the part of the brain that's the most important for our executive function, how we think, isn't mature until we're 22 or 23 years of age. Now, no teenager wants to hear that, right? I was a teenager. Believe it or not, all the people here who are older than you were also teenagers at one point. That's how we got here. And it's a difficult time, in part because that prefrontal cortex isn't ready yet. And so when you stress the brain, like putting them in high school does that, by the way, and putting them in all kinds of crazy situations, the brain isn't ready to cope. So it's sort of easy to go to cigarettes or pot or harder drugs or frankly anything that takes you away from the fact that your brain's not ready, which makes it a lot more difficult to stop later on. In fact, crazily, the first question I ask cigarette smokers is when do they start smoking? If they started smoking before 20, they're not going to quit without a lot of work. After 20, not usually a big problem. So Mike, go ahead and explain, point to the areas that are important, and I'll hold the mic for you.
So this is, we'll turn it over this way, turn it around.
Put some gloves on, Mike. In the meantime, pass the brain down. You have your gloves on? Here, you can pass it, you can pick it up here. Just pass it up here, and Mike will start demonstrating stuff. Go ahead. What's your name again?
Andrew.
Andrew. There's things I got a lot of very food descriptions earlier, the prunes, grapes, crepes. How would you describe this?
Weird.
Weird. All right. Thank you for elucidating that.
All right, so this is the front of the brain. This is here. This is the back of the brain. This is back here. So this area in the back of the brain is the occipital region. That's where your vision areas are. But what Dr. Oz was talking about is the front of the area. This is the prefrontal cortex, and the frontal cortex is all up here. And this is where your decision making, your executive function is happening. And then sort of deep inside is the sort of emotional centers and everything like that. But we call this the cortex, and yes, that's the important part right there.
So you move your arms and legs based on some of these areas. You activate, if you're right-handed or left-handed, it's a little different. You actually are able to process language, speak, and the key thing about the brain, it's a real structure, right? You can go ahead and pass it down. And we say that because Mike showed a slide, it's a chronic disease, and this is an organ that, you know how when you break your leg, you don't run so fast? When your brain isn't designed perfectly, and none of ours is, you get prone to certain problems. Addiction is one of them, which is why it's not a moral failing to have an addiction. A few of you put your hands up earlier when we asked about addiction in your family, and I'm going to come back to you in a second. Not to put you on the spot, but if you want to talk about it, people often judge others who are addicted because they see them at their worst. But the fact of the matter is, it's like seeing someone who's got a broken leg not run fast. All it means is their leg was broken, they couldn't run fast. Doesn't mean they're any lesser, any more flawed. It just means they need help in a different way, which is why that structure that you're passing along, please do not drop the brain. It becomes an issue. Now, I'm going to ask, does anyone have a description for the brain that's not food? Maybe if I ask it that way. Any thoughts? Let me know. What do you compare it to?
Like a sponge.
Sponge. A non-food descriptor.
Oh, like pasta. Like.
Pasta's a food, though.
Oh.
So pasta's like a food, so we don't want.
Oh, like a sponge.
So you can't take one word that was already used. How about you?
I don't know if it feels like intestines, but they look like a bunch of intestines.
That's good. You don't need intestines. Now, let's go to the redhead.
It looks like a maze.
What color? Describe the colors, enjoying the colors.
Beige.
All right, now this little part here, turn that around, show it to everybody. That's called the cerebellum, that part you're climbing on. Mike, describe that to them and show them the spinal column.
That was my next move. So as Dr. Oz said, this part here, turn it up, turn it around, go like this. This part here is the cerebellum. That's really important for your coordination and your balance. And then this part here, this is the pons and the brainstem. And the brainstem connects your brain to your spinal cord and to the rest of your body, and it's also sort of where your most basic functions are. So that's what controls sort of your breathing, your heart, and keeps you awake. So in the case of what we're talking about today, in the case of a drug overdose, this is the brainstem that's getting affected. And when you're not breathing, and your heart stops, and you don't get oxygen to your brain, and the brainstem dies, that's bad news. That's when brain death happens.
How many of you know what Narcan is? Naloxone? Have you heard that term? Good, a couple of you have. So we'd like to make naloxone available all over the country, and there are commissioners of health in different cities, like in Baltimore, where they're actually writing prescriptions so it's out there for you. And the FDA just approved the nasal version as well. So you literally would keep it in your home if someone that you knew overdoses. By the way, the reason we teach CPR is because most people drop dead in front of their families, because we spend most of our time with our families. So the life you save isn't some stranger usually, although that's a pretty good thing to do too. It's usually someone you know really well and care about. Naloxone is supposed to be given to families who might have a concern about addiction, so that if someone, God forbid, would overdose, in 30 seconds, they're back completely. And there's no addictive potential to naloxone. It's a pure antidote. It blocks the effect of the drug on that part of the brain that Dr. Krupain highlighted earlier. So what do you think, Principal?
Feels like Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
I have a 5 and 7-year-old girls at home, so.
You want to try it out?
It feels kind of like potato.
That's probably the best description. That's what I usually say to potatoes or a hard-boiled egg, because I go to food too, by the way. All right. So since we got you all up, I think maybe Mike, you want to surprise them? All right. He's going to break. We were arguing before before this event. Go ahead. He's got another big surprise. You can bring that over, Prince, if you don't mind. Now, one of the things that alcohol does, but so does some drugs, is it damages our liver. So we're going to ask you, guys, come around over here and come around. We put the brain here again. And Dr. Krupe is going to show you the other organ we want you to understand today. This is a very interesting organ. It's the biggest organ in the body. Are you ready?
All right, here is a piece of the liver, okay? As Dr. Oz says, this is affected by drugs, especially drugs like alcohol. It's the organ that sort of detoxifies our body. So all of our blood goes through the liver, and it takes all the bad things out, and that's a normal piece of that's what a normal piece of liver should look like. This is what happens when your liver starts getting a little bit diseased or very diseased. It starts to become fatty. I don't know how many people eat foie gras, but that's what that looks like.
Food will do this. You eat the wrong foods. All those who have big bellies, you know who you are. By the way, I know men over the age of 40 do not buy new belts, right? They slip the belt down like this, so they have a 32-inch waist. They think, because they're walking around like this. You know who you are. So you do that, unfortunately, that belly fat starts to cause fatty liver like that, which really does look like Play-Doh. All right, but Mike, this is what you wanted to show them.
Yeah, this is, at the end, you go from normal liver, get fatty liver, and then the most diseased liver is a cirrhotic liver. So you can see it gets all the liver tissue starts to die, you get all this fibrosis and fibrous bands, and the liver ends up shrinking, it gets really hard. So you guys can feel, well, these aren't gonna feel that, so you can feel the difference between this one and the one at the end.
Now,
what do you think?
Yeah, what does that feel like to you?
Yeah, like steak.
Steak, great. All right, no more foods. Did you guys have dinner yet?
Well, no, they're waiting till they get home.
That's why, it's for the conversation. So does this feel like little pieces of pebbles pulled together?
Yeah.
So that's called cirrhosis because literally it's what the Greek word means hard. So it's hardening and scarring. So this normal liver got irritated. It got fatty in the case of people who overeat, and it can become cirrhotic. Or you can use drugs and damage the liver because the liver is the main filter of the body. Please walk through and please touch it if you don't mind. The liver is the major filter of the body. We detoxify our body with our livers. If we don't have a healthy liver, we can't keep up with the toxins, which could be from water pollution, air pollution, bad things we may have put in our bodies, junk foods, but drugs are particularly, unfortunately, toxic thing, in particular alcohol, that we do to our livers. Now, what I love about young people is they have a voracious curiosity. And one of the things we learn about teens with Health Core is if you feed that curiosity wisdom, it gets converted to people making right decisions. If it's converted to an inability to cope with the world because it's so confusing, you're curious, you'll go find other ways of dealing with it, and that's why the night of conversation is so important to us. So what has struck you the most about what you looked at?
What?
What has struck your curiosity? What made you so interested in what you're watching?
How the healthy one is like softer and it just gets harder and worse.
You don't want to have that cirrhotic liver, do you?
No.
I'm looking at your eyes and I'm seeing something, I think it looks like fear. Is that a nervous laugh? I make people nervous sometimes. I don't do. What's your name?
Gabby.
So what do you think about those livers, Gabby?
Well, I was gonna say that one looks like cheese, but you said no more food.
I did. I think the theme is, we should put some food on that plate. Remember, everyone out there, if you post a picture to me, hashtag Native Conversation with an empty plate, it's great, but if you fill the plate up with food, put some cheese or steak on there, we'll be okay too. All right, everyone go back to your seats. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you. You keep going.
Okay.
I'll do it. No, you keep going.
Okay. All right, so that was fun. So let's. Oh, okay. I need the mic. Sorry. So accidents are one of the biggest killers in our country. Deaths from accidents that's a big cause of death. So if we're thinking about accidents, what do you think is the most common or the biggest cause of death from thinking about accidents? What kind of accidents kill the most people in our country? Car accidents? All right, that's one. Well, good idea. What other kind of accidents do you think are really big killers? Oh, what? I heard cars. I didn't hear anything else. All right, you guys are very smart. So, drug overdoses now kill more people than cars, guns, and falling, which we used to think of as the biggest cause, especially cars, right? So first is a drug overdose, then guns, then cars, and then falling. So, big cause of death in our country right now, and that's a big problem. That's why we're here tonight, right? So, how many people live in our country? How many people are here in the population of the U.S.? Yell it out. What? 7 billion? That's the world. Good. How about in just our country? 300 million, right? So about 10% of our population use illicit or prescription drugs for non-medical reasons, right? So that means illegal drugs, like heroin or cocaine or something, or prescription drugs like Percocet or other opioid drugs, or things that make you relax and things. And non-medical reasons means basically for fun. All right, and then there are 1.9 million people in our country who are addicted to prescription opioids. So does anybody know what prescription opioids are, other than our mayor? Can you yell out some prescription opioids so we're all on the same page? Vicodin, Percocet. Okay, we're probably not supposed to talk about those. Yeah, there's a bunch of Lortab, there's many different ones. So those are things that people get really addicted to. Prescription drugs, all right? All right, and here's this one's kind of shocking. Right? 75% of the world's opioids are used here in the U.S., but we only have 5% of the population. Well, right? So we're using a lot of drugs, or a lot of these prescription drugs, and that's as Dr. Oz started off saying. We prescribe a lot of these drugs. When I was in training, I wasn't trained like Dr. Oz. I wasn't trained on how to really prescribe these properly, and we were taught if somebody's in pain, you give them pain medication, and that's period. That's it. So we've gone maybe a little too far with that. All right, and so where are people getting painkillers? So we prescribe them, right? But people also get them from other places, and this is really surprising, perhaps. About 50% of people, more than 50% of people, get their prescription painkillers from somebody else who's not a doctor. So they get them from their friend, for free, or from their parents' medicine cabinet, because people had it and then they kept it. They got a big prescription. They used it for a day or two. They kept it for a rainy day, right? And so that's where they're coming from. So it's really important that we learn about how to get rid of prescription drugs. Right? We don't need to keep them, and we don't need big prescriptions of them. When you have a surgical procedure or something, for acute pain, your pain should only last a few days. And you don't necessarily need such powerful drugs for that either. All right. What else? All right, this is something Dr. Phil talked about, is that in this country, we don't actually even believe that prescription drugs are as bad as illegal drugs. So 40% of teens in this survey thought that prescription drugs are much safer than illegal drugs. But in reality, they're not. They're just as dangerous. They're just as addictive. And this is really important because people start taking prescription drugs. They don't think they're that dangerous. Prescription drugs are expensive. Their street value, they're expensive. But what's a lot cheaper than prescription drugs these days is heroin. So people get hooked on prescription drugs, and then they switch over to heroin, which ends up being cheaper. And 4 out of 5 people who are using heroin, it's estimated, their problem started with prescription drugs. So it's really serious. Like, you wouldn't think that anybody could end up using heroin, but anybody can end up using heroin. It's true. All right, and then this is what we were talking about earlier, and that's why we showed the brain. 9 out of 10 people who have a substance abuse problem start by the age of 18. Right? So that's really important. And that's it. And then the last other important thing that's really why the National Night of Conversation is important. You need to know what's up with your family history. Because if someone in your family, close relative, has had a problem with addiction, it can happen to you as well. And so you need to be especially well prepared for that. All right. Did you want to add anything?
No, I was going to borrow the mic.
Yeah.
So it's time for questions. We're getting some folks that are tweeting to us. Bob Portman, who's the senator from Ohio, just sent a nice note because he's, of course, getting his state, which has been very hard hit by addiction, on board with this. And again, folks from around the country are witnessing what we're having. So I want you to ask questions that are broad. You can be personal if you desire, but we've got some world experts up here who are able to help you out if you've got issues that we haven't addressed today. So I know it's hard to ask questions in a crowded arena. So
if you have any questions, we have cards. So the cards will be handed out. If there's any personal questions, we have experts from the school who will help you after the program if you have any personal problems that you want to deal with. And then the experts on stage will deal with any general questions about drugs and alcohol. So, but we do have the cards handed out. Please, if you have any questions, we'll collect the cards in a little bit. Thank you.
So I think we've got some cards. Do I have them, or? Okay, we'll start collecting them. Someone had asked about cirrhosis earlier, so I think I tried to address that with those livers, just to make it clear that the effects that inside of our body are often much more visible than what's going on the outside of the body. And I want to go back to one theme that I know comes up periodically. We see addicts when they're at their weakest and their worst moments, but recovery is real. The head of our nation's efforts on drugs, the drug czar, Mike Botticelli, was on the show recently, and he's a recovering alcoholic. He remembers waking up handcuffed to a bed, to a gurney in an emergency room after having had a car accident that almost killed him in Massachusetts. Of course, whenever someone's handcuffed to the gurney, it's usually an interesting story. But in his case, it catalyzed a change in his life that has put him on recovery, and he's now leading our efforts. And I think one thing that's impressed me about our leadership in Washington in this arena is so many of these folks actually are in recovery themselves. And this big concert that we hosted in Washington with Facing Addiction, who really did the work pulling it together. I got 600 different addiction groups together and said, you know what, we need to put a stake in the ground and end the silence. So if you're watching this broadcast right now, or anyone in this room, and you're in recovery, be vocal about it, brag about it. If you had breast cancer, you got past that, you talk to your friends about how it was hard, but you got through it. People who are addicted don't think that recovery is real because they never hear from people who were in recovery and got past it. So Tim Sullivan, who's been an instrumental part of this process for us. Tim, if you have, you got questions, or Kyle, come on up, Kyle, if you don't mind. If you ask it from here, it'll be a little easier, I think. Kyle's our coordinator for the parents here. He's our health corps coordinator in West New York.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing tonight? Thanks, sir. Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming out. We all appreciate you being here. So one of the questions we have is pot that bad? It's legal now out west. It helps people with cancer, and I see a lot of kids use it with no consequences.
So who wants to take the pot question? Jenna, go ahead, Jenna.
So anything that you put into your body changes the way that your body works. And so when you smoke marijuana, it changes the way that your body works. And so it's unhealthy. And it is also a way that people choose to cope with problems. And so there are lots of other ways to cope with problems. There are lots of things that you can do instead. And the younger you start to use drugs, even marijuana, the more likely it is that as you grow older, more harmful drugs will become attractive to you. So it's really important that anything that you put in your body be healthy or something that's prescribed by a doctor just for you.
Making one broad comment about pot. I personally think that medical marijuana is a very important tool and something we should be using in America when appropriate. The biggest concern I have about pot in young people in particular is they start to think they have to have it in order to be happy, in order to live a normal life. Even if they don't go on to more dangerous drugs, the fact that you would even think that's possible, that you don't have all the power you already need inside of you, makes me a little concerned. I mean, part of the reason we focus on this in health corps, and the students may have heard this, but I want the parents to hear it, and it's why I do health, period. The focus is on health, because if you can't control what's happening inside of your body, how are you going to change the world outside of it? Why limit yourself if you don't have to? I wouldn't go crazy if someone had smoked pot in my family. I've never smoked it, but that wouldn't be the issue. It would be the possibility that you'd think you needed it to get through the day. Do you have another question, Kyle?
Yeah, I think one of our students can.
Oh, good.
If one of you want to come up, Algun, if you want to come up with a question.
It's good to be called on, isn't it? Come on up, Algun. I hope it's a hard question, don't you? I hope so. Hey, come on over. Stand in front of the organs. Yes.
Is there a place I can look at all the different types of drugs? I hear all the names, the kinds, and I don't know what's bad, what's good. I mean, not what's good. What's
What are you saying to them, Kyle?
No.
God.
No, like what's bad and like what they do, like what are the functions, how they work on you, and how they affect your body in all different ways.
It's great. So who wants to take a question? Go ahead, Megan.
There's several wonderful websites out there for that. NIDA, the National Institute for Drug Abuse, is one. Partnership for Drug-Free America. I used to, in my office, I have a private practice, and I would see a lot of adolescents, and there's a great magazine, and I forget who puts it out. It's called streetdrugs.org. You can get it on there, and it's a booklet, and it goes in, and it actually has pictures, because I don't know if you're a parent, your kids might be bringing home something you're not sure what it is. And some of the substances seem very similar, and it kind of goes into demonstrate paraphernalia that you may need to look for around your house, how people use it, what it looks like, what names it might be sold under, especially now with this age of synthetic marijuana that is changing rapidly. Every time they get a hold of the chemicals used to make it, they try and make it illegal, they try and make drug tests for it, and the people creating it will change it a little bit. And just if I could say something real quick about the synthetic marijuana that is very widely used now. It's under the name Spice or K2, and they're always coming up chronic, all these kind of things. There's the assumption that, you know, it's man-made, it's not as harmful, it's just like marijuana, but very often there's chemicals in there that cause psychosis, and people have not come back, you know, from using some of these substances. So you just don't know what's out there when you're buying it. They sell it in convenience stores, it's potpourri, things like that. You don't know what you're using. The streetdrugs.org, the NIDA, there's a lot of information out there. If you want to research it, if your friends are doing it, or if parents, if you want to know what it looks like or what kids are calling it.
What about the good drugs? I couldn't help myself. All right, next question. So we got, I don't know, 400, 500 people here, so I know there's probably a lot. We can't get them all, but I know we can get to enough. Go ahead.
Yaina Solorzano. Okay, so how do I, I'm good, and you? Okay. How do I know if someone I know is an alcoholic?
Ooh, how do you know if someone's an alcoholic? I talked about this morning on the Today Show. You're in school probably, hopefully, so you didn't see it. But I'll just start and I'll hand it off to one of my expert colleagues. But you know, if you're worried that you might have a drinking problem, then you probably have a drinking problem. Because people who don't have drinking problems don't worry if they have a drinking problem. It's not the only way to figure it out. But one little tip is, are people around you talking about it? Another is, you tried to cut down, you didn't find it fun to cut down. Those indicate that you actually are linked. Now, there's this big paper that came out over the summer in JAMA, which is the American Medical Association journal. It's a big journal. And they looked at this issue called problem drinking. So there's alcoholism where, you know, you're really having big issues. That's probably 7 people. But this problem drinking category is 26 million people. Remember Dr. Coupain said that 300 million Americans? That means we basically have 10% of the population has got a problem with alcohol. And problem drinking means that it has changed your life for the worse. And don't always think that a problem drinking is that you fall down and hit your head and get into a car accident. Problem drinking is you're destroying your relationships. People don't trust you. You're pushing away your friends because they're bothering you about something that's a problem that they see and you don't. That's really how I would think about problem drinking. Anything to add? Covered okay? All right, thanks very much. Other thoughts? I know I see cards over here. You have some more? All right, we'll come back. Cards. Pass them up here. I see you getting, they're jumping up and down. They're so nervous. What if I come and ask you a question like this? So I could read your question for you, but why when you could ask it so beautifully yourself? So here, stand up.
How do you make someone with an addiction accept their addiction is out of control, especially when they're in denial?
Which is almost always in the beginning. Who wants to tackle that? One of our addiction counselors, Megan, Jenna?
Forcing somebody to accept is you're going to just go crazy. It's really not up to you. What I do is I focus on the behaviors, I focus on the relationships, how people are feeling about it. It's not about you. You have to kind of keep it in focus. It's about them. How are they feeling about it? Have they ever felt guilty about it? How is it impacting relationships? How is it impacting their job? But you really want to look at the consequences it's causing. And they very often won't see one thing related to another. Well, you know what? I'm late all the time because I have trouble sleeping. Okay, but why do you think you have trouble sleeping? What are you doing before you go to bed? How often do you drink before you go to bed? Whatever it might be. I really try and focus on the behaviors and the consequences that they may notice. But I don't hit my head against the wall. Eventually, people have to come to it on their own.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the question. Come on over. How are you? What grade are you in?
I'm in 8th grade.
8th grade. All right. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
If drugs are so addicted, how come after a few uses, sometimes people don't get addicted? Like, you get me, like, they go to parties, they use it, but then they don't get addicted. It's not like they're going to use it, like, every day.
What a great question. Why is it that if drugs are so addictive, some people can use them and don't get in trouble and can get rid of them, and others have issues? I'll start off by saying, remember that brain we showed? Did you get a chance to hold that? You didn't want to come up there? It was too far a walk? In 8th grade, you're too cool for that stuff. So here's the thing. That brain is very different among each of us. I'll give you an example. There are some people, when they take a pain medication, and your mayor can speak to this, I think, beautifully. They take a pain medication, and you know what happens to them? A narcotic? They fall asleep. The one time in my life I was given a narcotic for something, a procedure, I passed out. Other people get a narcotic, and they feel like the world's psychedelic. Like there's leaves that are brighter on every tree, even though it's the winter. And so if your brain responds differently to the drug, and you don't know, the only way to find out is to tempt fate. But it's not a pretty scene if you do tempt fate, because when you stop using drugs in those cases, the whole world goes gray. Everything looks black and white, not the good way, and anything in between is all gray, and there's just mud. And so your brain's ability to cope defines a lot how we keep up or not. Jenna, Mike, anybody? Bill?
There are several things that might make one person more what we call predisposed to having an addiction than someone else. If you have a family history of addiction, then you may be more likely to become addicted if you begin to use drugs or alcohol. If you're a person who has lived through some trauma or who has had some very significant life stressors, you might be a person who would be more likely to become addicted if you started using drugs or alcohol. So not everyone becomes addicted, but there are certain people who, are more likely to.
Thanks for the question.
Hi.
How are you? What's your name?
Kimberly. Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, what was your name again?
My name is Liz Angel.
My whole name?
Well, if your principal wants it, he's the principal.
Kimberly Perez Vega.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
This is my mom's question.
Mom, get up here, Mom. Mom's question. Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah. They're just sitting next to me. I'll keep you company. I'll hold your hand. It'll be fun. We'll get a picture. It'll be nice. Go ahead.
If a kid is feeling depressed and is already taking some kind of medication from a family member, what should the parents be removing from home to prevent an addiction?
Is that the question?
Yes.
On the card.
And you worried about it?
I'm concerned for a lot of kids in the neighborhood, yeah.
And why are you concerned about it? All right, that's all right. So
it's just sad. It's sad when you see a lot of immigrants coming from other countries. The kids, they have to deal with having their parents deported. It just breaks my heart to know that these kids, sometimes they don't have anyone, no one to turn to. They're afraid to come talk to anybody. They have teachers, they're afraid to talk to the teachers or the principal. So, or they talk to some other people, or maybe they do talk, but that person they're talking to doesn't know where to go or doesn't know how to help. So it's just sad to see that. I've heard a lot of that's going on, so I figure somebody has to know. Like, I just want to know what medication is there. If there is medication in the medicine cabinet, if these kids are just taking any medication that's in the medicine cabinet, what type of medication that is prescribed to a family member, right, for instance, will make someone feel good because they feel depressed. I don't know, I just want to know what kind of...
You just asked a question and changed my life. Why wouldn't you have wanted to ask that question yourself?
Why?
It's a great issue you bring up.
Because I didn't want to come on TV.
All right. So I need help on this one. The challenge, especially in communities when families are being fragmented, sometimes, especially if they're illegally here, they don't trust the system because it's not been there to help them frequently. What can we do to give resources? Where can people turn? And in particular, if they've got medications in the house and people are really struggling, especially young people, what's your first name?
Estela.
Estella says that she knows that sometimes kids are going to the cabinet and they're searching for what might help me through my crisis. Where can they turn for help?
I think I can handle that, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Here in the school, we have student
Actually,
awareness counselors.
borrow that mic up there. Thanks, Christian. Thank you, Stella.
Well, here in West New York, we're lucky enough to have 2 different substance awareness counselors. In the high school, we have Miss Elsie Diaz, and in the middle school and the grammar schools, we have Miss Lisette Lombana. Both of them are here.
Can you both stand if you don't mind?
Okay. Elsie, Lisette, please stand. Okay. When I tell you it's confidential to the point where sometimes I'll ask them, what's going on, and they'll say, honestly, don't worry about it, it's confidential, don't worry whose parent that is, to that point. So if any parent out there is seeking help, okay, you can go to them, and there is no consequence. If you as a parent think your son or daughter has an issue and you go, we will have them tested. If it does come back positive, they will get them the treatment and help they need. We will assist with that, and it's absolutely confidential. Okay? Also, if you're having some emotional issues, every school, we're lucky enough again to have social workers and the child study team and guidance who will keep it confidential. Okay? I've told the guidance counselors and the social workers, we'll go back and forth, and they'll come and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect you. And I said, no, that's your job, is to fight for the students. So it is absolutely 100% confidential. No one will know about it. Okay.
The magic word is always, I'm not at liberty to discuss it.
That's all they tell me, okay? It's not at liberty to discuss it, and we respect that as administrators, because we have to, it's the law. Ms. Lombano wants to say something too, please hold.
Hi. There's a lot of presentations that we do. We do them during the day. We do them at nighttime. We do them all different times. I've done them in English and in Spanish. We bring all the drugs that have been confiscated or drug paraphernalia. We do show and tell. And we show the parents, this is how you can make a pipe, this is how you can do this is what looks like this. So there's a need, you have the need.
Everybody away. You made it all worthwhile. God bless you all. God bless you. Now that we're off the feed, I'd love to get a picture of everybody. So don't move. I'm going to sit in front here. You'll all be in a picture. We'll post that. We at least have one picture with me. We'll get more after that. But me and the rest of the team, everybody will do it. And then we'll take some, I have some ideas for additional photos so we can post. It might be fun. Sort of nice to have 10 million people look at you. So I want to thank you very much for that question. All the questions, I know sometimes they're difficult to ask. And again, our counselors are here. Your counselors are here. We've got additional experts here. If you just want to sort of get a curbside consult, find one of them and just talk to them. We'll be here for a little bit because I appreciate that it's sometimes sensitive. All right, so I'm going to sit in the front. I'll get a selfie with you first. How's that? Is that okay with you? And I'll send it to you then. Actually, Tim, here. John Oates, captain of the Boston College basketball team, by the way. He also runs social media. Come on up. Come on, they go. Why don't you get Stella's information, send it to her if you don't mind. And then I'm going to come in front here, and if we can get, I need you guys down, and turn the slides off. I'll sit here and move all the stuff out of the way. We'll get a photo with everybody in the audience, and then we'll rush the stage. Timothy. I will. I don't know how to get this out of the way. All right. Great. I'll sit here. Guys in the back corners, guys in the back, all the police officers, come up front here, guys. And just fill in the aisles so we can get pictures of everybody. If you can, just sort of cuddle up a little bit so we can get a nicer shot. If you're over there, you're probably okay. Yeah, but let's fill in all the spots. Okay. All right. John, you'll get some photos? We got come sit down. God bless you. Guys, all right, we got our big photographer up there. Tell what. All right, you all ready? Can you see everybody, John? Choreograph this. Be a coach. Oh yeah. Get the coordinator. Come on. Get in front. Guys in the corners, principal, what are you doing? Get over here. Here, climb over here. No, come on. Oh, gee, I'm sorry. Here, climb over there.
Sanchez, I'm not the one.
That's a good principal. All right. Well, you have a pain medicine doctor right there. All right. You got everybody? Oh, yeah. Yeah, come on back. Now we do one where we're all cheering or waving or videotaping. Yeah. You got some more? They want bigger ones. Yay!
Thank you so much.
Oh, God. Thank you very much.
I'm Gloria Calgreco's cousin, your neighbor.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Gloria.
her husband and my father were first cousins.
I think everyone's related in Cliffside, from what I can tell.
Selfie. There you go.
Can I take a picture? Dr. Oz?
Yes.
Can I take a picture with
Yeah,
you?
go ahead. We'll get a couple photos.
All right, we got a couple photos. John?
Yes.
on, we'll watch it from